Hi guys, welcome back to the log cabin. And it is another rainy day. It's very cold and wet, and I thought it would be a good day to come on in and make some grilled cheese sourdough sandwiches. And I put a couple extra ingredients that make it extra special, so I wanted to bring you guys along and kind of show you how I make my grilled cheese sandwiches. I guess it's been about 10 years or so. Doug and I started our off-grid journey, and we, try to get good and master a lot of skills. And for me, I learned how to ferment, I learned how to can, I learned how to forage, I learned how to, work the wood-burning cook stove, and I mastered all these skills, and I got very good at them, and, making kombucha, all these different things, and I got really good at everything. But the one thing for me that I struggled with so hard, it was like my kryptonite, was making sourdough bread. And I know you guys can totally relate with me. A lot of you guys can. You watch all these videos and you watch people making the perfect sourdough bread, and I could never do it. And I would get frustrated and I would have so many problems. So it started when I started really getting into it a few years ago. I had gotten a sourdough starter, a covered wagon sourdough starter, and I was so excited. Well, we live off grid, we don't have air conditioning, and then I was feeding it over and over every day, and then you get all this sourdough starter, and it's like you can't make enough pizza crusts and pancakes and biscuits, to get the amount that you have of the dough. So I was like, oh my gosh, but I just kept it up, and what happened was in the summertime, it got so hot here, it's 100 degrees, very humid, it would get rancid, and so then I kind of stopped doing it for a while. The other thing that was hard for me was, I like things to be as easy as I can. I don't want it to be a lot of trouble because I have a million things going on here. So, when I'd make bread, it would make such a mess. I'd have the flour all over the counter, it'd be on the floor, it would be all over the cabinets. Then what happens when you get water with the flour, it gets sticky, and I would have big messes, and then you have to knead it, and then you have to put it somewhere, and you have to let it rise, and then you have to knead it again, and you have to let it rise, and then I would forget about it, and so it was just really, it was very complicated for me. And then besides that, you do it all, and then you would put it in the pan, and then I would always forget to score it, and I know you guys have done that too. You'd forget to score it, and then it would be really flat, or it wouldn't look pretty. It was just crazy. I tried it in the cast iron pans. I've tried it, in the cast iron pans, it generally works, it was okay. But I just was never very comfortable with it. It was always like, oh, I gotta make bread again. It wasn't one of those things where I was excited to make bread. So, I just started doing a lot of problem solving and trying to figure out how can I make it easy for me, where it wouldn't be messy, where it would be easy, and it would be something that I could do, and I would be very successful, and it would be healthy for me, and it would taste good, and it would work. And then I remembered what my wonderful husband said: progress, not perfection. And that was, I think, what I needed to hear to kind of help me kind of go to the next level. Sometimes it's good to get a little motivational speaker to kind of help you and say, hey, you need to do this. And he was my motivational speaker that kind of helped me. And from then on out, I really put my mind to it, and I said, I'm going to figure this out. And I did. So first of all, before I give you my secret, I'm going to have you guys wait till the end of the video. But sourdough is a traditional bread, and it is the oldest form of, you got cuckooed. So sourdough bread is a traditional bread, and it's the oldest form of leavened bread. It dates back to ancient Egypt. Now back then, all bread was either unleavened or basically sourdough bread. Now it is thought that sourdough bread could have been made by accident, when the unleavened bread was left out, and then the wild yeasts attached to it, and lo and behold, you get sourdough bread. So the sourdough is made from the wild yeast. It's not like an instant yeast like we're used to now, like the commercial yeasts. It was something that we got, from nature. It's much easier to digest. The bacteria and the yeast of the starches gets broken down in the grains. So basically, it kind of pre-digests it And then in turn, it makes it easier on your digestion. And it also has a much lower glycemic index, and it won't spike your blood sugars like other breads generally will, because it's assimilated into the body much more slowly. So a lot of people that can't tolerate traditional or actual like conventional breads can tolerate sourdough bread much better. And even some people that may have certain types of gluten intolerances can do the sourdough because of the starches being eaten up and pre-digested. And then also if you have problems with blood sugar, you're able to eat the sourdough. And I'm one of those people that I can't eat regular bread, or I can feel my blood sugar. I'm very sensitive to that, but I can do sourdough bread and it does not bother me at all. But everyone's different, so you always have to check and see. So now let's get started, and I'm going to show you the sandwich that I'm going to make today, and talk a little bit more about my recipe that I have perfected over the years. So all you're going to need to make this grilled cheese sandwich is your bread, and I'm going to do the sourdough bread, of course. And you're going to need some cheese of your choice. Today I'm using Gouda, and I'm going to use a little cream cheese. You don't have to do this, but I'm just going to kind of put a little kick into it. So I'm going to do them cream cheese, and then some greens. It can be any kind of greens that you feel comfortable with. I have some arugula that we had in our cold frame outside and a little spinach, so I'm going to do a mixture of those, but you can do all spinach, you can do arugula, you can do kale, you can do Swiss chard, whatever green that you like, and a little, you can do some olive oil. I'm going to use some ghee or some butter, something that you are comfortable with, and that's it. So let's get going. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to saute my greens in the ghee right now. So do that first. My greens are sauteed, and so I want to kind of go back a little bit and talk to you about how I got the sourdough recipe and kind of how I went through my process. So I had gotten it from Baker Creek at their spring planting festival, at the spring planting festival in Mansfield, Missouri. And they have a bakery there, and they had the actual sourdough culture. So I got a covered wagon sourdough culture from Tajikistan. And basically all you need to do is, to keep it, is you feed it every 2 weeks. And I thought, awesome, I can do every 2 weeks, just keep it in the refrigerator and feed it every 2 weeks. So what I liked about it, and I had tried different ways, you know, feeding it in the morning, feeding in the afternoon, feeding it at night. What worked for me the best was in the evening, I would pour my whole jar out of my starter, and then I would put 3/4 cup of warm water to 1 cup of flour. Easy. Stir it up, let it set overnight. When I got up in the morning, then I would go ahead and pour the majority back in my jar to put in the refrigerator, and then I kept about 3/4 of a cup of the starter in my bowl to make my bread with. To the starter, I added 5 cups of warm water. Make sure it's, you know, a filtered, purified type water, spring water. You don't want to use chlorinated water. So 5 cups of the warm water, and then I did 5 teaspoons of unrefined salt. I like to use the Redmond salt. And then it had 1/2 teaspoon of cane sugar and 1/2 teaspoon of olive oil. So I just mixed that all together. And then what I really liked about it after that, it was all mixed up. Then there was no measurements on your flour, because, you know, a lot of times when I'm doing this recipe, I'll try different types of flour. So sometimes I would mix spelt with einkorn flour, or spelt and whole wheat flour, you know, just different. It depends what I was in the mood for, or rye, or whatever you're using, whatever flour that you use. So what I would do is you would just put in enough flour into your recipe that it would make it into a bread dough. So that worked out great. I would just put my flour in there, and then I would just kind of, I started using the spatula, because I tried, you know, there's all the different cutting things and the different tools, and I was just having a lot of troubles with it all. So I just had my big stainless steel bowl, and I would just kind of fold it over, and I started not like kneading it that much. Then my hands would get sticky. I didn't want to get so much in the flour. I mean, you know guys, you know what I'm talking about. So I would go ahead and I started putting in the bowl, and then I would just kind of fold it over a few times, and then I would let it set. I put my towel on it, and then in the morning I would let it go all day. And then around dinner time, I would go ahead, and it would rise a little bit, and then I would go ahead and I would fold it a few times more. Then I would put the towel back on it, and then I would let it go overnight. And then in the morning, I'm gonna go ahead and get ready to bake my bread. I would take the towel off and I would go ahead and knead it a little bit with the spatula. And then I would put the bread into greased bread pans. Now here is where I started having a problem. Like I was telling you guys earlier, half the time I would always forget to score it, and then it would be very flat and it wouldn't rise very well. So I remember I'd go over to the Amish a lot, and when they make bread, they would get like 2 chunks of the bread dough, and they would put 2 of them in a pan, and that's how they bake their bread. And they kind of go together so that they're easier to break apart. So then I started going, because it's just Doug and I, we don't have a lot of people, so I thought I'm gonna do it in 3 chunks. So I would get my pans and I would put 3 blobs of dough in each of the pans. And the cool thing about it, as you can see, it kind of makes it look crazy looking. I liked it because all I would need to do is I could just pull it apart, watch. See how nice it just pulls apart like that? Because of the 3 little blobs that I put in it. So I call this my ugly 3-knot bread, sourdough bread. And that way, let's say I'm gonna just use this piece and I can put the rest of this away and it doesn't, kind of get all messed up. So I started doing it like that and it was working really well. And look how pretty it looks, by the way. Isn't it nice? Nice and dense. It's wonderful bread. So I just started doing it. I didn't need it that much. I just would let it set most of the day, and I would do it in the next morning. So the next morning I would put my 3 blobs in my trays, and then I would put it in the oven. And a lot of recipes that you look for sourdough bread, it says, you need to put your temperature high and then bring it down low. Well, half the time, I forget, or I'm busy and I have a wood burning cook stove. Sometimes my temperature isn't perfect. So I would just kind of think it'll still cook, won't it, if I just keep it at a regular temperature? So generally it was about 350 or so. I would put my bread in and I wouldn't adjust the temperature. I would just put it in just like that and let it bake, about 30 minutes or so. And it works wonderfully. It works out great. So I've been doing it. I'm very happy. I'm a very happy sourdough maker now. I enjoy making it. I make it consistently all the time. I give it as gifts now. I love my sourdough. Everyone loves the way it tastes. And I'm so happy. This is the one thing that has just been really my nemesis and I could never get right, but persistence pays off, as they say, and it's turned out great and we look forward to it. And here's the other thing that's awesome about this bread. It smells heavenly too right now, that it lasts. So I keep it in a cool pantry in the back, and I have this bread, it'll last back there. It doesn't get moldy or anything, a couple weeks. And it just might get a little harder. And you can just put it in the toaster. Well, you don't have a toaster, but you can put it in the oven or, just warm it up and it tastes great. It just tastes like I just baked it. So I'm very happy about this bread, but let's get started. I want to show you how to make this wonderful sourdough cheese sandwich. So one of my little knots that I just cut off, I'm going to go ahead and cut some slices. See how nice it slices? See how nice that is? Pretty as a picture, huh? I already have my greens. They're in the pan already. And I'm going to place these in the buttered pan. So they get kind of toasted. Oh, here, leave another comment below. How many people like the heel of the bread the best? Or do you like it the worst? Let me know. That'll be my part. I like that part of the bread. Doug doesn't as much, so he gets the other part. Sometimes things that you think are really complicated, they really aren't. So I think I was looking into things way too much, and basically it's very simple. You don't need to knead it too much. I mean, this is something that's been done for thousands of years. It's not like they say rocket science. And just through practicing and trial and error, I mean, this works out the best for me. So I flipped my cheese over, and I'm gonna get a little bit of this cream cheese and spread it on top of it. Bread, I got the cream cheese. Then I'm gonna put my cheese. I'm gonna put the Gouda cheese on it. Time for the greens. So I'll put the greens on top of that. Now, I have my greens and then cheese and a little cream cheese on the buttered bread. Now you have a choice here if you guys want to put any seasoning. If you want to put some garlic, you could put some garlic powder on there if you want, or if you want to put some like cayenne pepper if you want to add a zing to it. You know, whatever you guys feel comfortable doing, you can put on there, or you don't have to put anything at all. It's dinner time. We are going to have this with a little tomato soup. How many of you guys like grilled cheese and tomato soup? It's one of our favorites here. I love it, and I bet you guys do too. But leave a comment below on that one. You owe me 3 comments this time. But seriously, I know a lot of you guys are struggling with making bread, and I just try to make it as easy as I could, and this really worked out good for me. I didn't have to knead it. I would just let it go for a whole day and a whole night and not have to really worry about it. Just kind of flip it a couple times with my little spatula thing, and it was so easy, and I just keep everything, and the only thing I got dirty was my big stainless steel bowl. I didn't have to worry about my counter or anything. So this was my foolproof way of doing it. I really like doing the 3 little knots in there, or you could do 2. I didn't have to worry about scoring it. Sometimes you'd score it and it would poof back down. And so this just always works really great for me. So I don't know, if you guys are having trouble, maybe try it like I'm doing it. And don't worry about how it looks. It's all about how it tastes and perseverance. It does pay off. And I'm very happy I finally mastered my sourdough bread. Other than that, guys, I hope you have an awesome day and looking forward to spring, and I will see you later. I'm going to call Doug in right now. He's up at the front at the woodlot working. See you later. See how nice it just pulls apart like that?